The golden rays of morning sunlight pierced through the towering iron gates of the Smith mansion, painting the sprawling gardens with an ethereal glow. Amidst the perfectly trimmed hedges and vibrant flower beds, Evelyn Johnson worked diligently, her hands dusted with soil. To an outsider, she was just another gardener, her petite frame blending seamlessly into the grandeur of the estate. But beneath her calm demeanor lay a fierce determination, a burning desire to rise above her circumstances. Evelyn's thoughts often wandered as she worked. At just 18 years old, she had faced more than her fair share of struggles. Growing up in a rundown neighborhood riddled with crime and poverty, she had seen dreams crushed under the weight of systemic inequality. Yet, her mother's unwavering advice echoed in her heart: stay honest, stay strong, and one day, the world will see your worth. As she knelt to prune a row of roses, the laughter of the mansion's elite echoed from the terrace above. Alexander Smith, the enigmatic billionaire, stood surrounded by a group of sharply dressed executives. His commanding presence was matched by his wife, Sophia, whose elegant features belied the icy sharpness in her gaze. Evelyn had often seen Sophia barking orders at the staff, her tone laced with condescension. The contrast between Alexander's calm demeanor and his wife's cold arrogance was striking. Evelyn kept her head down, pretending not to notice the whispers among the staff about the Smiths' rocky marriage. Money doesn't buy happiness, they often said. To Evelyn, it seemed like money only amplified people's flaws. Later that afternoon, Evelyn paused under the shade of an ancient oak tree, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. Her break was brief. She knew the unspoken rules of her position. Lingering too long might draw Sophia's ire. The other gardeners had warned her during her first week, don't expect kindness. Just do your job and keep quiet. Yet, Evelyn often found herself silently protesting the blatant injustices she observed. The subtle racism, the classist remarks, the dismissive glances, it all chipped away at her resolve. But she refused to let bitterness take root in her heart. As she rose to resume her work, a sharp voice cut through the stillness. Johnson. Sophia's heels clicked against the stone path as she approached. Evelyn turned, her pulse quickening. Why is this hedge uneven? Sophia demanded, gesturing dramatically at a row of meticulously trimmed bushes. Evelyn hesitated, unsure how to respond. The hedge was flawless, but pointing that out might worsen the situation. I'll fix it right away. Ma'am, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her stomach. See that you do, Sophia snapped before walking away, her designer dress swishing with every step. Evelyn exhaled slowly, biting back the urge to retort. Moments like these reminded her why she needed to escape this life. Evelyn's shift ended as twilight blanketed the mansion. She stayed behind to finish an extra task, a habit born of her unyielding work ethic. As she made her way to the gardener's shed, she noticed a figure seated alone on a bench overlooking the garden. It was Alexander Smith. The billionaire seemed lost in thought. A glass of whiskey in hand, Evelyn hesitated. It wasn't her place to intrude. But something about his expression, a mix of weariness and longing, made her pause. Before she could turn away, Alexander spoke. Beautiful, isn't it? He said, gesturing to the garden. Evelyn nodded, unsure how to respond. You designed this section, didn't you? He asked, surprising her. Yes, sir, she replied cautiously. It's remarkable, he said, his tone genuine. You have an eye for detail. Not many people do. Evelyn's heart raced. Praise from Alexander Smith was rare. Thank you, sir, she managed, her voice tinged with both pride and disbelief. As she walked away, her mind buzzed with possibilities. Perhaps, just perhaps, Alexander Smith wasn't like the others. Perhaps he might be the key to the opportunities she sought. The next morning, Evelyn returned to the mansion with renewed determination. Yet, as she worked, an unsettling tension hung in the air. The household staff whispered among themselves, their faces pale. Something was amiss. Did you hear about the fight last night? One maid whispered to another. Sophia and Richard, again. The other replied, shaking her head. Evelyn's curiosity was piqued. Richard Blake was Alexander's closest friend, a charismatic man often seen lounging by the pool or sharing drinks with the Smiths. Yet, rumors of his growing influence and his possible affair with Sophia had begun to swirl. By afternoon, Evelyn's suspicions were confirmed. As she pruned the ivy along the west wall, She heard voices from the open library window above. "We need to move faster." Sophia's voice hissed. "If Alexander suspects anything, we're done for." "Relax," Richard replied smoothly. "He trusts me completely. The plan is foolproof." Evelyn froze, her pruning shears trembling in her hands. Their words were sharp and loaded with implication, but the specifics remained unclear. She pressed herself closer to the wall, straining to hear more. "This time next week, it'll all be over," Sophia said, her voice icy with resolve. "Alexander will be out of the picture. And the fortune will be ours." Evelyn's blood ran cold. Her heart thundered in her chest as the weight of their conspiracy sank in. They were planning something heinous. Something that could cost Alexander his life. She backed away from the wall, her mind racing. What should she do? If she reported this, who would believe her? A lowly gardener with no proof. But if she stayed silent, the consequences could be catastrophic. As night fell, Evelyn lay awake, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and determination. She knew one thing for certain: doing nothing was not an option. Evelyn woke before dawn, the sky a deep indigo streaked with faint wisps of pink. Her mind was heavy with the memory of what she had overheard the previous day. The stakes were terrifyingly high. Alexander Smith's life hung in the balance, and Evelyn was the only one who could save him. But what would it cost her? As she walked through the morning dew to the gardener's shed, Evelyn replayed the conversation in her head. Sophia's cold resolve, Richard's smug confidence, it all painted a chilling picture. Yet, there was no proof. If she approached Alexander, he might dismiss her outright. Or worse, accuse her of lying. The risks felt insurmountable. By mid-morning, Evelyn was tending to the flower beds near the east wing of the mansion. The rhythmic motions of digging and planting were usually therapeutic. But today, they did little to calm her nerves. Every sound, every shadow, made her flinch. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her thoughts spiraled as she considered her options. 1. Say nothing. It would be the safest route. But her conscience wouldn't allow it. 2. Tell Alexander directly. The most honest approach. But also the most dangerous. 3. Gather evidence. If she could find proof, her words might carry more weight. Her resolve hardened. She had to act, but she needed to be smart about it. Evelyn decided to spend the day observing and gathering clues. She hoped that something, anything, would strengthen her case. The opportunity came sooner than expected. As Evelyn carried a wheelbarrow toward the greenhouse, she noticed Sophia standing by the pool, speaking on her phone. The sharpness in her tone caught Evelyn's attention. "No, we can't afford any mistakes," Sophia hissed. She paused, listening intently before adding, "Yes, the jet. Make sure it's done by tomorrow night." Evelyn's heart pounded. She slowed her pace, pretending to inspect a nearby hedge while straining to hear more. "Richard will handle the rest," Sophia continued. "I need this to be flawless. Understand?" The conversation ended abruptly as Sophia turned and strode into the house, her heels clicking against the marble path. Evelyn exhaled, her hands trembling around the wheelbarrow's handles. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Sophia and Richard were planning to sabotage Alexander's private jet. But how could she prove it? Later that day, Evelyn made her way to the hangar on the edge of the estate. It was a restricted area, guarded by a single security officer who looked more interested in his smartphone than his surroundings. Evelyn approached cautiously, her heart pounding as she considered the risk. "I left some tools here yesterday," she said, feigning innocence. The guard barely glanced at her before waving her in. Inside, the sleek, gleaming jet stood in the center of the hangar. Evelyn felt a mix of awe and dread as she approached it. The enormity of what she was doing hit her like a wave. But she pushed the fear aside. As she inspected the exterior, her eyes caught something unusual. A small panel near the rear landing gear was slightly ajar. It seemed out of place on such a meticulously maintained aircraft. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder before prying the panel open. Inside, wires were exposed, and a strange device was attached. She didn't know much about aviation, but this clearly wasn't standard equipment. Her breath hitched. This was it, proof that something sinister was at play. Evelyn left the hangar as quickly and discreetly as possible. She knew she had to tell Alexander immediately. But fear gripped her. What if he didn't believe her? What if Sophia and Richard found out she had interfered? That evening, Evelyn waited until the mansion was quiet before making her way to Alexander's study. The heavy oak door was ajar, and the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminated the room. Alexander sat alone, a glass of whiskey in his hand as he reviewed a stack of papers. Evelyn hesitated, her hand hovering near the doorframe. Her mind screamed at her to turn back, but she forced herself to step inside. "Mr. Smith?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander looked up, surprised to see her. "Evelyn? It's late. Is something wrong?" Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I need to speak with you. It's important." His brow furrowed, but he gestured for her to sit. Evelyn remained standing, her nerves making her fidget. "There's something you need to know," she began, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. She recounted everything she had overheard, including Sophia's phone call and the tampered panel on the jet. Alexander's expression hardened as she spoke. When she finished, there was a long silence. "You're accusing my wife and my closest friend of, what? Murder?" he said finally, his tone laced with disbelief. "I know how it sounds," Evelyn replied, her voice urgent, "but I swear, I'm telling the truth. Check the plane yourself if you don't believe me." Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "Why would you risk telling me this?" Evelyn met his gaze, her eyes blazing with determination. "Because it's the right thing to do. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent." Alexander didn't respond immediately. He stood, draining his glass before setting it down with a sharp clink. "If what you're saying is true, then you've just saved my life," he said. "But if you're lying, I'm not," Evelyn interjected, her voice firm. Alexander sighed. "Fine, I'll look into it. But if this turns out to be a misunderstanding, there will be consequences." Evelyn nodded, relief washing over her. As she left the study, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten slightly. She had done what she could. Now, it was up to Alexander to act. The next morning brought a heavy fog, blanketing the Smith estate in an eerie stillness. Evelyn awoke with a sense of unease, her mind racing with questions. Had Alexander taken her seriously? Would he investigate the jet? Or had she just signed her own dismissal notice? As she slipped into her work clothes and headed for the garden, she couldn't shake the tension gripping her chest. The familiar sense of damp earth and blooming roses did little to soothe her nerves. Every shadow seemed ominous, every sound amplified in her heightened state of alertness. By mid-morning, Evelyn spotted Alexander near the hangar, speaking with a man she recognized as the chief mechanic. She kept her distance, hiding behind a row of hedges as she watched the conversation unfold. Alexander's expression was unreadable, but the mechanic looked concerned, nodding emphatically as Alexander spoke. Moments later, the two men disappeared inside the hangar. Evelyn felt a flicker of hope. Alexander was taking her claims seriously. But her relief was short-lived. As she returned to her duties, the weight of potential consequences bore down on her. If Sophia or Richard discovered her interference, the fallout could be catastrophic. By noon, Alexander summoned Evelyn to his study. The request was unusual. Gardeners were rarely called to the inner sanctum of the mansion. Evelyn's heart pounded as she approached the heavy oak door. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. Alexander stood by the window, his back to her. A file lay open on his desk, filled with photographs and handwritten notes. Evelyn's stomach churned as she glimpsed a picture of the tampered jet panel. "You were right," Alexander said, turning to face her. His expression was grim, a mixture of anger and disbelief. "The plane was rigged to fail. The mechanic confirmed it this morning." Evelyn felt a wave of relief, but it was quickly overshadowed by the gravity of the situation. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Alexander's jaw tightened. "That's the question, isn't it? My wife and my best friend are plotting to kill me, and I have no idea why. I need to figure out their motives before I act." Evelyn hesitated. "Sir, I know it's not my place. But, if you confront them now, they'll deny everything. They'll know you're onto them. And they might try something else." Alexander nodded slowly, his sharp mind already racing ahead. "You're right, we need to catch them in the act. But I'll need your help." Evelyn blinked in surprise. "My help? You've already proven you're more than just a gardener," Alexander said, his tone firm. "You've shown courage, intelligence, and loyalty. I need someone I can trust." The plan they devised was bold and risky. Evelyn would remain in her role as a gardener, blending into the background while keeping a close eye on Sophia and Richard. Meanwhile, Alexander would act as though he suspected nothing, lulling the conspirators into a false sense of security. To gather more evidence, Alexander arranged for surveillance equipment to be discreetly installed in key areas of the mansion, including Sophia's private quarters and Richard's guest suite. Evelyn would assist by reporting any suspicious activity she observed during her work. As the details of the plan came together, Evelyn felt both exhilarated and terrified. She had never imagined herself in such a high-stakes situation, but she couldn't deny the thrill of taking control of her destiny, even if it meant walking a razor's edge. Over the next few days, Evelyn kept a close watch on Sophia and Richard. Her position as a gardener gave her access to areas of the estate that others rarely visited, allowing her to observe without arousing suspicion. She noticed subtle changes in their behavior. Sophia, usually composed and commanding, seemed on edge, her eyes darting nervously whenever Alexander was nearby. Richard, on the other hand, exuded overconfidence, his charming demeanor barely masking the arrogance beneath. Evelyn also overheard snippets of their conversations. Phrases like, "timing is everything," and "make sure he's alone," sent chills down her spine. Every word, every gesture, seemed to confirm their guilt. One afternoon, while tending to the garden near Sophia's balcony, Evelyn saw a folded piece of paper flutter to the ground. Sophia had apparently dropped it while stepping onto the balcony to take a phone call. Evelyn's heart raced as she discreetly retrieved the note. The message was short but chilling. "Final adjustments complete. Everything is set for Thursday night." Evelyn hurried to Alexander's study, clutching the note tightly. When she showed it to him, his face darkened. "This is it," he said, his voice low. "They've set a timeline. We need to be ready." As Thursday approached, the tension in the mansion was palpable. Alexander played his role perfectly, attending meetings and entertaining guests as though nothing was amiss. Evelyn, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to stay unnoticed while gathering every piece of information she could. That evening, as the household staff retired for the night, Alexander and Evelyn met in the study for a final briefing. The plan was simple yet dangerous. Alexander would board the jet as scheduled, but a team of trusted security personnel would be hidden nearby, ready to intervene. Evelyn's role was to monitor Sophia and Richard's movements and report any suspicious activity. "You've done more than I could have ever asked," Alexander said, his voice filled with quiet gratitude. "No matter what happens tonight, you've already proven your worth." Evelyn felt a surge of pride. "We'll get through this, sir." Together, Thursday night arrived, and with it, a suffocating sense of anticipation. The Smith estate seemed unnaturally quiet, every shadow in the mansion's grand halls brimming with unseen tension. Evelyn moved carefully, her every step calculated as she prepared for the night's events. She had a role to play, and failure was not an option. In the hangar, the private jet gleamed under the fluorescent lights. A skeleton crew moved efficiently, unaware of the hidden danger. Alexander stood nearby, speaking with his chief of security, Marcus. Marcus was a towering man with a calm, commanding presence, Alexander's most trusted ally. "The team is in position," Marcus said in a low voice. "Sophia and Richard won't see it coming." Alexander nodded, his expression a mask of calm. "Good, let's give them the show they're expecting." Back in the mansion, Evelyn lingered near the main staircase, pretending to tidy a floral arrangement. Her keen eyes tracked Sophia as she descended, dressed in a sleek black gown, her every step exuding confidence. Richard followed close behind, his face lit with an unsettling smirk. "You're sure everything is set?" Sophia murmured as they passed Evelyn, oblivious to her presence. "Absolutely," Richard replied. "By this time tomorrow, we'll be celebrating our freedom." Evelyn's grip on the vase tightened, her pulse racing. She waited until they were out of earshot before slipping into the shadows, making her way to the secure room where Alexander and Marcus were monitoring the mansion's surveillance feeds. "They're heading to the hangar," Evelyn reported breathlessly. Alexander glanced at Marcus. "It's time." As Sophia and Richard arrived at the hangar, they found Alexander waiting at the foot of the jet's steps. He greeted them with his usual calm demeanor, showing no sign of suspicion. "I thought you two might join me for a drink before I leave," Alexander said, his voice smooth and unassuming. Sophia hesitated, but Richard quickly recovered, flashing a charming smile. "Of course, Alex. One last toast before your trip." Evelyn, watching from the shadows, felt her stomach churn. The air was thick with tension. Every word and gesture a potential trigger. As the group moved to a small lounge near the hangar, Alexander poured drinks for the three of them. Evelyn, positioned nearby, strained to catch their conversation. "To new beginnings," Alexander said, raising his glass. His tone was casual, but his eyes held a sharpness that made Evelyn's heart race. "To new beginnings," Sophia echoed, her smile a calculated mask. After their drinks, Alexander made his way to the jet. From her hiding spot, Evelyn watched as he climbed the steps, his silhouette disappearing into the cabin. Moments later, the engines roared to life, and the jet began to taxi down the runway. Sophia and Richard stood together, their faces illuminated by the glow of the hangar lights. Evelyn saw the subtle exchange of glances between them, an unspoken confirmation that their plan was unfolding perfectly. But as the jet disappeared into the night, Evelyn knew the truth. Alexander wasn't on board. The jet was piloted by a trusted associate, its mission to execute a convincing mid-air explosion over a remote area. An hour later, a staff member rushed into the mansion, breathless and pale. "There's been an accident," he stammered. "Mr. Smith's jet, it went down." Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in feigned shock. No, that can't be." Richard placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his expression carefully composed. "We need to stay calm," he said. "The authorities will handle this." Evelyn watched from a distance, her blood boiling at their performance. She fought the urge to confront them, knowing the time wasn't right. Later that night, Sophia and Richard met in the library, their hushed voices barely audible through the thick door. Evelyn, equipped with a recording device provided by Marcus, positioned herself nearby, capturing every word. "We did it," Sophia said, her voice trembling with suppressed excitement. "It's finally over." Richard laughed softly. "Now we can move forward. No more looking over our shoulders." Evelyn's heart pounded as she listened to their incriminating words. This was the evidence they needed, proof of their guilt, spoken in their own voices. The next morning, as the estate buzzed with news of Alexander's death, Evelyn and Marcus put the final phase of their plan into motion. With the recording in hand, Alexander, who had been in hiding, coordinated with law enforcement to stage an ambush. Sophia and Richard, believing themselves untouchable, gathered in the mansion's grand hall to discuss their next steps. Evelyn positioned herself nearby, her presence unnoticed as always. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and a team of police officers flooded the room. At their head was Alexander, alive and well, his presence striking like a thunderclap. "What is this?" Sophia demanded, her face pale as she stared at her husband. "This," Alexander said coldly, "is justice." The grand hall of the Smith mansion erupted into chaos. The sight of Alexander Smith, very much alive and standing at the head of the police force, shattered the facade Sophia and Richard had carefully maintained. Evelyn watched from the edges of the room, her heart pounding as the moment she had worked so hard for finally arrived. Sophia staggered backward, her face ashen. "Alexander, how?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "Surprised to see me?" Alexander's voice was sharp, his eyes cold as steel. "You should be. I know everything." "Sophia, the tampered jet, the conspiracy, your little partnership with Richard. It's over." Richard stepped forward, attempting to maintain his composure. "Alex, listen, whatever you think you've uncovered, it's a misunderstanding. I would never." "Save it," Alexander interrupted, his tone cutting through Richard's excuses. He gestured to Marcus, who stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. The recording Evelyn had made played in the suddenly silent room. The voices of Sophia and Richard filled the space. "We did it. It's finally over. Now we can move forward. No more looking over our shoulders." Sophia's face crumpled as the weight of her own words sealed her fate. "This isn't what it sounds like," Sophia shouted, her voice shrill. "You're twisting everything." Richard, now visibly shaken, tried to step into the role of protector. "You don't have proof we did anything to the jet. This could be a setup." "Proof?" Alexander's voice dripped with disdain. "You mean the tampered wiring we found in the hangar? Or the multiple payments from my accounts to Richard's shell companies? Should I go on?" Evelyn watched as the color drained from Richard's face. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. The police officers moved in, handcuffs at the ready. "Sophia and Richard Blake, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." the lead officer announced. Sophia's defiance melted into panic as the cold metal cuffs snapped around her wrists. Alexander, please, don't do this. I was desperate. Desperate? Alexander's voice cracked with emotion for the first time. You plotted to kill me. Sophia, you betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. Desperation doesn't even begin to justify what you've done. Richard remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor as the officers led him away. As the hall emptied of police officers and onlookers, Alexander turned to Evelyn, his expression softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. You were the one who made this possible, he said. You risked everything to tell me the truth. Evelyn felt a lump form in her throat. I couldn't stay silent. You didn't deserve what they were planning. Alexander nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. You're braver than anyone I've ever met. And you've given me something I thought I'd lost, a chance to trust again. Over the next few days, the pieces of the conspiracy came together. Investigators discovered that Sophia and Richard had been siphoning money from Alexander's accounts for years. Their plan to sabotage the jet was born out of fear that Alexander was beginning to suspect their activities. Sophia's motivations ran deeper. Her relationship with Richard had become more than platonic, and the two saw Alexander's death as a way to eliminate the biggest obstacle to their wealth and freedom. Evelyn listened as these details unfolded, each revelation deepening her resolve to ensure justice was served. Despite the success of their plan, the emotional toll on Alexander was evident. One evening, Evelyn found him in the garden, sitting on the same bench where they had first spoken. It's strange, he said as she approached. I built this empire thinking it would protect me, give me control. But it's the people closest to me who nearly destroyed me. Evelyn sat beside him, her voice gentle. You survived because you stayed true to who you are. And because you had the strength to trust someone like me. Alexander turned to her, his eyes glistening. You're not just someone. You're extraordinary, Evelyn, and I intend to make sure the world knows it. The arrests of Sophia and Richard became a media sensation. Reporters swarmed the mansion, eager for details about the scandal. Alexander, ever the strategist, used the publicity to announce sweeping changes to his business operations, including increased transparency and philanthropic initiatives. Behind the scenes, Alexander worked closely with his legal team to ensure Sophia and Richard faced the full consequences of their actions. Evelyn, now a trusted confidant, played a key role in organizing the evidence and preparing for the upcoming trial. The trial of Sophia Smith and Richard Blake became the event of the year, dominating headlines and captivating the public. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, eager to catch a glimpse of the former socialites now reduced to defendants. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Evelyn sat quietly in the gallery, her presence a reminder of the courage and determination that had brought the truth to light. The prosecution wasted no time laying out the case against Sophia and Richard. The charges included conspiracy to commit murder, attempted sabotage of an aircraft, and embezzlement. The evidence was damning. Detailed forensic reports confirming the tampering of Alexander's private jet, financial records showing years of unauthorized transactions to Richard's shell companies, audio recordings of Sophia and Richard incriminating themselves. Sophia's high-priced defense attorney attempted to frame the situation as a misunderstanding, suggesting that Alexander had overreacted to financial irregularities. But the mountain of evidence told a different story. When Evelyn was called to testify, the courtroom fell silent. Her testimony was pivotal. She was the first to uncover the conspiracy and the only one brave enough to bring it to Alexander's attention. As she stepped to the witness stand, Sophia glared at her with barely concealed hatred. Richard, on the other hand, avoided her gaze entirely. Miss Johnson, the prosecutor began, can you recount the events that led you to inform Mr. Smith of the defendant's plan? Evelyn's voice was steady as she detailed the conversations she overheard, the notes she found, and the lengths she went to in order to gather evidence. Her calm demeanor and unshakable honesty left little room for doubt. The defense attempted to undermine her credibility, suggesting that Evelyn had fabricated the story to gain Alexander's favor. But Evelyn's composure never faltered. Why would I risk everything, my job, my safety, if this wasn't the truth? She asked, her voice firm. I had nothing to gain and everything to lose. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Her words resonated with the jury. And even the skeptical murmurs in the gallery began to fade. As the trial progressed, Sophia's calm facade began to crack. Her arrogance gave way to desperation, and she became increasingly erratic. On the 5th day of the trial, she requested to take the stand against her lawyer's advice. "This is all a mistake," she cried, her voice trembling. "Yes, I made some financial decisions without Alex's knowledge, but I never wanted to hurt him." The prosecutor pounced on her inconsistencies. "So you're saying the recordings of you discussing Mr. Smith's death were fabricated?" Sophia faltered. I didn't mean those things. I was angry, frustrated." Her weak defense only solidified the jury's perception of her guilt. The prosecution delivered its final blow with a surprise witness, the chief mechanic who had uncovered the tampering on the jet. His testimony was clear and precise, leaving no doubt about the defendant's intent. "I've worked on Mr. Smith's aircraft for over a decade," the mechanic said. "This wasn't a mistake or routine maintenance. It was deliberate sabotage." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the weight of the evidence became undeniable. As the trial neared its conclusion, the prosecution introduced another shocking piece of evidence: Richard's criminal history. Before meeting Alexander, Richard had been involved in several financial scams. Though he had avoided conviction through technicalities and manipulation, the revelation painted a damning picture of Richard as a chronic schemer. Someone who saw Alexander's wealth as his golden ticket. Richard's lawyer attempted to dismiss the past as irrelevant, but the jury's expressions suggested otherwise. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Evelyn held her breath as the judge read the decision. Sophia Smith, guilty on all counts. Richard Blake, guilty on all counts. Sophia sobbed as the reality of her fate set in, while Richard sat motionless, his face a mask of defeat. The judge sentenced both to lengthy prison terms, ensuring they would have no opportunity to harm Alexander, or anyone else, again. As the courtroom emptied, Evelyn felt a wave of relief wash over her. Justice had been served, and the nightmare was finally over. Alexander approached her, his expression filled with gratitude. "You've changed my life, Evelyn," he said, "and not just by saving it. You've reminded me of what really matters: integrity, loyalty, and courage." Evelyn smiled, her eyes glistening. "You've changed mine too. You gave me the chance to do something meaningful, and I'll never forget that." In the weeks following the trial, Alexander followed through on his promise to support Evelyn's future. He funded her college education and invited her to work alongside him, mentoring her in business and philanthropy. Evelyn embraced her new role with the same determination that had driven her to expose the conspiracy. Under Alexander's guidance, she began to envision ways to use her newfound resources to uplift others, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds like her own. In the wake of the trial, the Smith estate seemed lighter, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. But for Evelyn, the end of Sophia and Richard's reign of deceit marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would challenge her in ways she could never have imagined. Evelyn's life underwent a dramatic shift. With her newfound role as Alexander's mentee, she was thrust into a world of luxury, influence, and relentless ambition. Alexander, true to his word, enrolled her in one of the country's top universities, covering her tuition and living expenses. But Evelyn's days were far from carefree. Alongside her rigorous coursework, Alexander involved her in the operations of his vast empire, offering her a front-row seat to the complexities of corporate leadership. "This isn't just about business," Alexander told her one evening as they reviewed reports in his home office. "It's about understanding people, their struggles, their motivations, their potential. That's how you lead." Evelyn listened intently, soaking in every lesson. She saw this opportunity not just as a path to personal success, but as a way to honor her promise to herself, to make a difference. Despite her growing influence, Evelyn faced resistance from unexpected quarters. In the boardroom, some of Alexander's senior executives were less than welcoming. "She's just a gardener," one man sneered during a private meeting. Unaware Evelyn was standing outside the door. "What does she know about running a company?" Evelyn's heart sank, but Alexander's response reignited her resolve. "She knows integrity, something this company desperately needs more of," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And if anyone doubts her potential, they're free to leave." Evelyn confronted these challenges with grace, determined to prove herself not through words, but through action. During her studies, Evelyn began to develop a vision for the future of the Smith Empire. She proposed initiatives to make the company more socially responsible, including scholarship programs, vocational training for underserved communities, and sustainable practices in its business operations. At first, the board was skeptical. "We're a corporation, not a charity," one executive argued, but Evelyn persisted, using data and heartfelt testimonials to demonstrate the long-term benefits of investing in people. With Alexander's unwavering support, she gradually won them over. The first program, a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, launched within a year. Evelyn personally oversaw the selection process, ensuring that those who were often overlooked were given a chance to succeed. As Evelyn's influence grew, so did her circle of allies. One of her first supporters was Clara Martinez, a dynamic young lawyer Alexander hired to assist with the company's legal affairs. Clara, impressed by Evelyn's vision, became both a mentor and a friend. "You're shaking up the system," Clara said over coffee one evening. "And trust me, that's no small feat. But be ready. Change always comes with resistance." Evelyn nodded, knowing Clara was right, but the resistance she faced only fueled her determination. One of Evelyn's most emotional moments came when she visited her old neighborhood as part of a community outreach program. Standing in the crumbling streets where she had spent her childhood, she felt a surge of gratitude and responsibility. She met with local leaders, listened to their concerns, and pledged to bring resources to the area. True to her word, she launched a pilot program offering free career counseling and job training for local residents. "Evelyn Johnson?" one teenager asked incredulously during a workshop. "You used to live here?" Evelyn smiled. "I did, and if I can make it out, so can you." Throughout this journey, Evelyn's bond with Alexander deepened. He treated her as more than a mentee. He saw her as the daughter he had never had. One evening, as they worked late in his study, Alexander shared a rare moment of vulnerability. "I've made mistakes, Evelyn," he said quietly, "trusting the wrong people, losing sight of what mattered. But you've given me a second chance, not just at life, but at leaving behind a legacy I can be proud of." Evelyn was deeply moved. "You gave me a chance when no one else would," she replied. "I'm just returning the favor." Despite their progress, Evelyn and Alexander faced significant challenges. The company's transformation into a socially conscious organization drew criticism from some investors, who accused them of neglecting profits for the sake of idealism. At one particularly contentious shareholder meeting, Evelyn stood her ground. "This isn't about choosing between profit and purpose," she argued. "It's about recognizing that long-term success comes from empowering people, not exploiting them." Her passion and eloquence won the room. But Evelyn knew the battle for change was far from over. Months turned into years as Evelyn Johnson grew into her new role, balancing the responsibilities of a college education with the growing demands of the Smith Empire. Each challenge she faced, each barrier she overcame, solidified her reputation as a force to be reckoned with. Yet, the journey was far from over. As Evelyn's initiatives began to take root, whispers of dissent reached her ears. Certain factions within the company, led by disgruntled executives, were actively working against her. They viewed her progressive vision as a threat to the traditional, profit-driven model they had thrived under for decades. One evening, Alexander called Evelyn to his private office. His expression was serious, his usual calm tinged with concern. "We have a problem," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were leaked emails detailing a covert plan by several senior executives to undermine Evelyn's projects. "They're trying to discredit you," Alexander continued. "They think if they sabotage your initiatives, they can force me to revert to the old ways." Evelyn's hands trembled as she read the documents. She had faced resistance before, but this was calculated and personal. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "We fight," Alexander said, his tone resolute, "but we do it strategically. They want to play dirty? We'll beat them with the truth." Evelyn and Alexander worked tirelessly to uncover the full extent of the sabotage. With Clara's legal expertise and Marcus's investigative skills, they gathered evidence of unethical practices orchestrated by the dissenting executives. Evelyn decided to address the issue head-on during a company-wide meeting. Standing at the front of the boardroom, she presented the findings with unwavering confidence. This company was built on trust, integrity, and innovation, she said, her voice carrying through the room. Those who think they can undermine these values for personal gain have no place here. Her words struck a chord, and the room erupted in applause. The exposed executives resigned in disgrace. Their influence effectively neutralized. Evelyn's victory not only secured her initiatives but also solidified her position as a leader within the company. With the dissent quelled, Evelyn refocused her efforts on expanding the company's impact. She launched a groundbreaking initiative called Pathways to Potential, aimed at bridging the gap between underserved communities and high-demand industries. The program included scholarships, covering tuition for students pursuing degrees in fields with labor shortages, vocational training, hands-on programs for adults seeking new careers, internships, opportunities for underprivileged youth to gain real-world experience within the Smith Empire. The initiative garnered widespread praise, earning Evelyn recognition as a visionary leader. Evelyn's growing influence caught the attention of the media. Journalists were fascinated by her journey from gardener to corporate trailblazer, dubbing her the Phoenix of Smith Enterprises. One interviewer asked, "What motivates you to keep pushing boundaries, even when faced with so much resistance?" Evelyn smiled thoughtfully. "Because I know what it's like to be overlooked, to feel like the odds are stacked against you. If I can help even one person realize their potential, then every challenge is worth it." Her humility and authenticity resonated with audiences, further boosting the company's reputation. Amid her professional triumphs, Evelyn's relationship with Alexander continued to deepen. He became more than a mentor, he was her family. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Alexander invited Evelyn to his study. A bottle of wine sat open on the desk, a rare indulgence for the reserved billionaire. "I'm proud of you," he said, raising his glass. "You've taken everything I've taught you and made it your own. The company has never been stronger." Evelyn raised her own glass, a warm smile spreading across her face. "And I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when no one else did." Their toast felt like a promise, to each other and to the future they were building together. As Evelyn's initiatives flourished, a new challenge emerged in the form of a rival corporation led by Damien Frost. A shrewd and ruthless entrepreneur, Frost Industries began aggressively targeting the same markets Evelyn was working to uplift, often undercutting Smith Enterprises with cutthroat tactics. "Frost doesn't care about ethics," Clara warned during a strategy meeting. "He'll do whatever it takes to win, even if it means destroying communities in the process." Evelyn knew she couldn't outmatch Frost's tactics with sheer aggression. Instead, she leaned on the values that had brought her this far: transparency, collaboration, and innovation. Her team launched a campaign showcasing the tangible benefits of Pathways to Potential, featuring success stories from individuals whose lives had been transformed. The campaign was a resounding success, shifting public opinion firmly in favor of Smith Enterprises. Evelyn's initiatives began to bear fruit in profound ways. Schools in her old neighborhood saw an influx of scholarships, and local businesses flourished thanks to vocational training programs. During a visit to one of the communities she had supported, Evelyn met a young woman named Tara who reminded her of herself. "You gave me a chance," Tara said, tears streaming down her face. "Because of you, I'm the first in my family to go to college." Evelyn felt her chest tighten with emotion. "No," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "You're the one who made it happen. All I did was open the door. You walked through it." The transformation of Smith Enterprises into a socially conscious powerhouse had inspired countless individuals and communities. But it also drew the ire of those who thrived on exploitation and greed. Evelyn Johnson, now a prominent figure in the corporate world, faced new battles on multiple fronts. As the stakes grew higher, so did the opposition. Damien Frost, the ambitious and ruthless CEO of Frost Industries, saw Evelyn not just as a rival but as a threat to his empire. Frost Industries operated on razor-thin ethics, using aggressive marketing and predatory practices to dominate industries. Evelyn's initiatives, with their emphasis on transparency and community investment, exposed the hollowness of Frost's approach. Frost began a calculated smear campaign against Evelyn and Smith Enterprises, accusing them of inefficiency and virtue signaling. Social media platforms buzzed with fabricated stories, painting Evelyn as an inexperienced idealist out of her depth. At a board meeting, Clara presented the latest headlines. Smith Empire's poster girl fails to deliver. It's Frost's handiwork, she said, slamming the papers on the table. We need to hit back. But Evelyn shook her head. No, if we stoop to his level, we lose the trust we've worked so hard to build. The truth will speak louder than his lies. Frost's campaign turned personal when an anonymous tip led reporters to dig into Evelyn's past. Stories of her humble beginnings were twisted into narratives of pity and doubt. Can someone with no formal training truly lead a corporate empire? The headlines questioned. Evelyn felt the weight of the scrutiny, but she refused to let it break her. Alexander, ever her pillar of strength, reminded her of the bigger picture. You've faced worse than this, he said, his voice steady, and every time, you've come out stronger. This is no different. With Alexander's encouragement, Evelyn held a press conference. Standing before a sea of cameras, she addressed the accusations with poise. My past doesn't define my capabilities, she said, her voice firm but calm. It's shaped my values, my empathy, and my determination to create opportunities for others. I've earned my place here, not through privilege, but through hard work and integrity. And I won't let that be tarnished. Her words resonated with the public, and the tide began to turn in her favor. Evelyn's greatest allies emerged from the communities she had uplifted. Individuals whose lives had been transformed by her programs took to social media, sharing their stories with the hashtag #EvelynInspired. I wouldn't be where I am today without Evelyn Johnson and the opportunities she created. One post read, accompanied by a photo of a young woman in her college graduation gown. The grassroots movement became a powerful counter to Frost's campaign, showcasing the real, tangible impact of Evelyn's work. As Evelyn focused on countering Frost's attacks, another threat emerged from within Smith Enterprises. A high-ranking executive, long aligned with the old guard, secretly began leaking sensitive information to Frost Industries. The betrayal came to light during a critical negotiation with a major client. Evelyn, unaware of the sabotage, entered the meeting only to find Frost already present, armed with proprietary data. This is quite the surprise, Frost said, his smirk infuriatingly smug. Though I can't say I'm shocked. You've always been a step behind. Evelyn's fists clenched under the table, but she maintained her composure. Enjoy your stolen victory, she said, but know this. Shortcuts like yours never lead to lasting success. The setback was significant, but it only strengthened Evelyn's resolve to root out corruption within the company. With Marcus's help, Evelyn identified the traitor, Daniel Greaves, a senior executive with ties to Frost. In a tense confrontation, Evelyn presented the evidence. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. But you chose greed over loyalty. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Greaves's dismissal sent a clear message to the rest of the company. Betrayal would not be tolerated. Evelyn and her team launched a bold new initiative, a partnership with grassroots organizations to expand their community programs nationwide. The move not only reinforced Smith Enterprises' commitment to social impact but also positioned them as leaders in corporate responsibility. Frost responded with a desperate attempt to undermine the initiative, funding opposition campaigns and spreading false narratives. But Evelyn's transparent approach and the authenticity of her work won over both the public and major investors. As the initiative gained momentum, Frost Industries began to falter. Damien Frost's once unshakable empire showed signs of cracking under the weight of its own unethical practices. At the end of the year, Smith Enterprises hosted a gala to celebrate the success of their initiatives. Community leaders, program beneficiaries, and business partners gathered to honor the impact of Evelyn's vision. In a heartfelt speech, Alexander praised Evelyn's resilience and leadership. Evelyn Johnson has not only transformed this company but also the lives of countless individuals. She embodies the values we should all aspire to: integrity, empathy, and courage. The room erupted in applause, and Evelyn felt a swell of pride and gratitude. She had come so far, but she knew her journey was just beginning. As the gala concluded, Evelyn received an unexpected message, a cryptic note from Damien Frost. This isn't over, it read. I don't lose. Evelyn stared at the note, her resolve hardening. She knew Frost wouldn't back down, but neither would she. Evelyn Johnson had faced adversity before, but the challenges now seemed insurmountable. Damien Frost's cryptic warning loomed large, and the battle between Smith Enterprises and Frost Industries was about to escalate into its most intense phase yet. Evelyn's resolve was unshakable, but the stakes had never been higher. Damien Frost wasted no time launching his next assault. Frost Industries began a hostile takeover attempt of one of Smith Enterprises' key partners, a tech firm crucial to Evelyn's community-focused initiatives. The move was calculated to destabilize Smith Enterprises, undermining their ability to sustain their programs. Evelyn convened an emergency strategy meeting with Alexander, Clara, and Marcus. "Frost is playing dirty, as usual," Clara said, flipping through the documents outlining the hostile takeover. "If he succeeds, it'll cripple our operations in several markets." Evelyn nodded, her expression calm but determined. "Then we can't let him succeed." Clara, "Start drafting an offer to match Frost's bid." Marcus, "I need you to dig deeper into Frost's financials. If he's stretching himself thin for this move, we'll find it." As Clara and Marcus executed their tasks, Evelyn worked behind the scenes to rally support from key stakeholders. She met with community leaders and partner organizations, emphasizing the importance of their shared mission. "We're not just fighting for a company," she said during a meeting with local leaders. "We're fighting for the people who depend on us. Together, we're stronger than any corporate predator." Her words inspired action, and within days, several influential organizations publicly pledged their support for Smith Enterprises. Meanwhile, Marcus uncovered critical information. Frost Industries was overleveraged, relying on borrowed capital to sustain their aggressive tactics. Armed with this knowledge, Evelyn devised a plan to expose Frost's financial instability, undermining his credibility with investors. As Frost's takeover attempt intensified, Evelyn made a bold decision. She proposed a joint venture with the tech firm under threat, offering them a stake in Smith Enterprises in exchange for long-term collaboration. The move was risky but brilliant. By aligning the tech firm's success with her own company's, Evelyn effectively shielded them from Frost's grasp while strengthening Smith Enterprises' position. When the deal was announced, the media hailed it as a masterstroke. Frost Industries' takeover attempt collapsed under the weight of investor skepticism, leaving Damien Frost seething. Frost's next move was personal. He hired private investigators to dig into Evelyn's life, hoping to uncover a scandal or weakness he could exploit. One morning, Evelyn was confronted by a reporter as she left her office. "Ms. Johnson, care to comment on these allegations?" the reporter asked, shoving a microphone toward her. Evelyn glanced at the headline on the reporter's tablet. "Evelyn Johnson's Shady Rise to Power?" The article was filled with baseless accusations and innuendos, clearly orchestrated by Frost. Evelyn refused to engage. Instead, she held a press conference, addressing the rumors head-on. "Damien Frost can try to tarnish my reputation, but the truth is simple. My work speaks for itself. I won't be intimidated, and I won't back down." Her transparency and confidence won public support, turning Frost's smear campaign into another failure. Despite Frost's relentless attacks, Evelyn continued to push forward. She spearheaded the launch of a new initiative called Roots of Change, a program focused on sustainable development in underserved communities. At the launch event, Evelyn delivered a powerful speech. "Change doesn't come easily," she said, "but when we plant seeds of hope, nurture them with care, and protect them from harm, we create something lasting, something no one can take away." Her words resonated deeply, drawing widespread praise. The program's early success further cemented Evelyn's legacy as a visionary leader. As Frost Industries struggled to recover from its failed takeover attempt and declining public image, Damien Frost's desperation reached a breaking point. He orchestrated one final, desperate gambit, a cyberattack targeting Smith Enterprises' critical systems. The attack was devastating, causing disruptions across multiple divisions. Evelyn and her team worked tirelessly to contain the damage, but the incident exposed vulnerabilities in their operations. "This was Frost," Marcus said grimly as they assessed the aftermath. "No doubt about it." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make sure he pays for it." Clara's legal team quickly gathered evidence linking the cyberattack to Frost Industries. Evelyn decided to take the fight to court, filing a lawsuit against Frost for corporate sabotage and damages. The courtroom battle was intense. with Frost's lawyers attempting to deflect blame and undermine Evelyn's credibility. But Clara's meticulous preparation and the mountain of evidence left little room for doubt. The trial reached its climax when Marcus presented digital records tracing the attack directly to Frost's headquarters. Damien Frost, cornered and exposed, finally crumbled under the weight of his own hubris. The court ruled in favor of Smith Enterprises, ordering Frost Industries to pay significant damages and implement strict oversight to prevent further misconduct. The victory in court was more than just a legal win, it was a moral triumph. Evelyn's resilience and commitment to her values had not only saved Smith Enterprises but also set a powerful example for ethical leadership. At a celebratory gathering, Alexander raised a toast to Evelyn Johnson, he said, his voice filled with pride. A true leader, a relentless fighter, and the future of this company. The room erupted in applause, and Evelyn felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced Damien Frost's worst and emerged stronger. The victory over Damien Frost marked a defining moment for Evelyn Johnson and Smith Enterprises. It wasn't just a triumph over a formidable rival, it was a vindication of Evelyn's leadership and her unwavering belief in doing what was right. Yet, as the dust settled, new challenges arose, testing her resolve and shaping the legacy she was building. The cyber attack had exposed vulnerabilities in Smith Enterprises' infrastructure, prompting Evelyn to launch a comprehensive overhaul. She spearheaded the creation of a new division focused on cybersecurity and digital innovation, ensuring that the company would never be caught off guard again. Evelyn worked tirelessly alongside the team, refusing to delegate all responsibility. Her hands-on approach earned the respect of employees at every level of the organization. "We don't just rebuild," Evelyn said during a company-wide address. "We rebuild stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before." Her leadership inspired a sense of renewed purpose across the company, solidifying her position as a transformative force. Alexander Smith, now in his twilight years, began to reflect more deeply on the future of his empire. Evelyn's success had assured him that the company was in capable hands. But he wanted to ensure that his legacy extended beyond business. One evening, he invited Evelyn to his study. The room, filled with old photographs and awards, was a testament to his storied career. "Evelyn," he began, his tone unusually reflective, "you've achieved more than I ever imagined. But there's something I need to tell you." Evelyn leaned forward, sensing the gravity of his words. "I've always been driven by ambition," Alexander continued, "but you've shown me the importance of something greater, creating a legacy that lifts others. I want you to take this company and make it more than I ever could. Build something that lasts, not just for us, but for the world." Evelyn was deeply moved. "I'll do everything I can to honor your vision," she said, "and to make it our vision." Evelyn began forging partnerships with like-minded organizations, expanding Smith Enterprises' reach into new industries and social initiatives. Among her most ambitious projects was a collaboration with global leaders to address environmental sustainability. The initiative, dubbed Green Horizons, aimed to transition the company to 100% renewable energy within 5 years, fund clean energy startups in underserved regions, educate communities on sustainable practices. The project garnered international acclaim, cementing Smith Enterprises as a global leader in corporate responsibility. Amid her professional achievements, Evelyn never lost sight of the personal connections that had shaped her journey. She remained deeply involved in the lives of the people she had helped through her initiatives, often visiting communities to witness the impact firsthand. During one visit, she met Malik, a young boy whose family had benefited from Smith Enterprises' vocational training programs. "You're my hero," Malik said, clutching a drawing he had made for her. Evelyn knelt to accept the picture, her heart swelling with emotion. "You're the hero, Malik," she said, "because you remind me why I do this." As Alexander's health began to decline, he made a monumental decision. He formally announced Evelyn as his successor. The news was met with widespread approval, but it also brought new scrutiny. During a press conference, a reporter asked, "Ms. Johnson, what makes you qualified to lead one of the largest corporations in the world?" Evelyn's response was direct and heartfelt. "I've earned my place through hard work, perseverance, and a commitment to values that go beyond profit. Leading Smith Enterprises isn't just about running a business, it's about creating a future that empowers others." Her words silenced the skeptics and reaffirmed her vision for the company. In Alexander's final days, Evelyn spent hours by his side, listening to his stories and absorbing his wisdom. On a crisp autumn evening, as the two sat on the mansion's terrace, Alexander took her hand. "You've been like a daughter to me," he said, his voice weak but steady. "And I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. "You've given me everything, Alexander. I promise I'll carry your legacy forward." When Alexander passed peacefully in his sleep days later, the world mourned the loss of a titan. Evelyn, though grief-stricken, channeled her sorrow into honoring his memory. Under Evelyn's leadership, Smith Enterprises expanded its social initiatives to a global scale. Programs like Pathways to Potential and Green Horizons became models for corporate responsibility, inspiring other companies to follow suit. Evelyn's influence extended beyond the corporate world. She was invited to speak at international summits, where her powerful message of resilience, equality, and ethical leadership resonated deeply. Despite her success, Evelyn remained grounded. She continued to visit her old neighborhood, mentoring young people and sharing her story. She never forgot where she came from or the people who had shaped her journey. One evening, as she stood on the terrace of the Smith mansion, now her home, she gazed at the stars. Just as she had with Alexander years ago, a sense of peace washed over her. She had faced betrayal, opposition, and doubt, but she had emerged stronger, carrying with her the values that Alexander had instilled. "I'll keep my promise," she whispered to the night sky, "to build something lasting, something that gives hope." Years passed, and Evelyn Johnson's vision continued to reshape not just Smith Enterprises but the world at large. Her journey from gardener to CEO became a symbol of resilience and possibility, inspiring countless others to pursue their dreams against all odds. Yet, for Evelyn, the true measure of success wasn't found in accolades but in the lives she touched and the legacy she built. Under Evelyn's leadership, Smith Enterprises became a global powerhouse in both business and social impact. The company's hallmark programs, Pathways to Potential, Roots of Change, and Green Horizons, had expanded to every continent, transforming communities and lifting millions out of poverty. Evelyn's hands-on approach remained central to the company's ethos. She frequently traveled to program sites, connecting directly with the people whose lives had been changed. During a visit to a small village in Kenya, she met a young woman named Amina, who had started her own business thanks to a Smith Enterprises microloan program. "I never thought this would be possible," Amina said, tears of gratitude in her eyes. Evelyn smiled. "The possibilities were always within you, Amina. We just gave you the tools to unlock them." Though Damien Frost had been humbled by his legal defeat, his company persisted. Though diminished, Evelyn often encountered his shadow in competitive markets and industry conferences. Frost remained a stark contrast to her values-driven approach, a constant reminder of the battles she had fought and won. At one global summit, Frost approached Evelyn during a networking event. His once cocky demeanor had been tempered, but his ambition was still evident. "You've done well for yourself, Evelyn," he said, raising a glass. "But the game's never over." Evelyn met his gaze with calm confidence. "It's not a game, Damien. It's people's lives. That's where we'll always differ." Frost's smirk faltered, and he walked away, leaving Evelyn to reflect on how far she had come. Evelyn's success didn't just transform her professional life, it also brought her closer to her roots. She ensured her family's financial security, moving her mother to a beautiful home near the Smith estate. Her mother, once skeptical of Evelyn's ambitions, now beamed with pride. "You've done more than I ever dreamed, Evelyn," she said one evening over dinner. "But what makes me proudest is that you've never forgotten who you are." Evelyn smiled. "That's because of you, Mom. You taught me everything I needed to know about strength and honesty." As Evelyn matured into her role as a global leader, she began mentoring the next generation of changemakers. She established a fellowship program to identify and support young leaders with bold ideas for social impact. One fellow, a passionate young man named Jamal, reminded Evelyn of her younger self. His proposal to address housing insecurity through modular, sustainable homes caught her attention. "You've got something special, Jamal," she told him during their first meeting. "Let's work together to make this happen." Evelyn poured her energy into guiding him, knowing that her greatest legacy would be the leaders she inspired. As Smith Enterprises reached new heights, Evelyn began contemplating the future. The weight of her responsibilities, though fulfilling, had taken its toll. She decided it was time to step back from the day-to-day operations, transitioning into a role as chairwoman of the board. Her announcement at the company's annual gala was met with a standing ovation. "This isn't a goodbye," she said, her voice steady. "It's a new beginning for me, and for the incredible leaders who will carry this company forward. Our mission has always been bigger than any one person. It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive." Freed from the demands of corporate leadership, Evelyn dedicated herself to philanthropy and advocacy. She wrote a best-selling memoir, Seeds of Change, which chronicled her journey and the lessons she had learned along the way. Her story inspired a wave of social movements, with young people around the world citing her as their role model. One evening, Evelyn returned to the Smith estate, now her permanent home. She stood on the terrace, gazing at the starlit sky, just as she and Alexander had done so many years ago. "I kept my promise," she whispered, her heart full, "and I'll keep going, as long as I'm able." Evelyn's life became a testament to the power of resilience, integrity, and vision. Her work continued to flourish through the leaders she had mentored and the initiatives she had started. In her twilight years, she reflected on her journey with gratitude and pride. She had faced betrayal, discrimination, and countless obstacles, but she had turned every challenge into an opportunity for growth and impact. And as her story continued to inspire, Evelyn Johnson remained a shining example of what one person could achieve with courage, determination, and a commitment to making the world a better place.